Mythologies exist on this planet simultaneously. They're all creation stories that date all the way back to the beginnings of the planet itself, but these are the culture's sort of creation story of that culture. But they are sort of simultaneously coming up in different geographic locations on the Earth. I originally started pitching this to people and saying, the mythologies of the world are sort of cultural origin stories separated by geography. So when you think about the mythologies, I say the visual is the Hubble telescope image of all the galaxies, right? That super long exposure shot that shows all the galaxies of the world as part of a whole universe, right? And I think you look at the planet, and it is really just these mythological stories all over the world that kind of exist at the beginning of time all the way into present. So, historically in their timelines, a lot of these stories are about before man. Right, so that they're like, this happened before, and we were talking about what this was. So these connections to all of that was, okay, when he leaves Greece, he is leaving sort of the sort of ecosphere of this mythology, but there are so many others that exist all over the place, and that when he goes to Scandinavia, he ends up in Scandinavia, it is kind of this line of demarcation, right? This sort of BC AD change to, okay, it is still him, but he has entered into this sort of new belief system, right? It is like going to another country, right? That, everyone's speaking a different language. There is a different sort of set of rules and cultural norms, right? It's just, it happens to be that there's a bunch of gods hanging around with a bunch of monsters hanging around.
Yeah,
So,
I remember you saying not that long ago that this is this version of Kratos, but you could delve into other mythologies with him in the future and I think that's really interesting because it's something that, having him be part of one and the idea that it would overlap is jarring, but also really interesting. It's like you can do a lot of weird stuff there with different mythologies just intertwining.
And having like even slight tangential connections. Like I very, very, very intentionally have this period of time from the end of 3 to the beginning of this game in which we don't tell anybody how long it is, right? Mm-hmm. I know how long it is. The writers know how long it is. No one else.
Okay, this is where, I don't know if you have to light a joint for this question or what, but okay, thinking about realms, how this stuff works. Are all of the realms, okay, I guess the question is Midgard all of the Earth, or is it just that one area? Like, does a section of Midgard extend all the way to Greece? Is there a version of Asgard, which probably we weren't talking about yet, that also envelops the entire world? Basically, do the realms from Norse mythology expand beyond Norse mythology, is the question.
In my mind, you can contradict, and I don't think we ever necessarily said for certain, but like, Midgard is Earth. It's,
all of Earth.
It's all of Earth or whatever, but like, the people who are involved in Norse mythology, who worship those gods and whatever, are in this section of Earth, and to them, Midgard is to them what to the Greeks, whatever Gaia, or the Earth, or whatever was to them. It's just Earth to me. I didn't think of them when I was writing anything as completely separate places.
Yeah. So
pretty much, yeah.
But
Kratos got on a boat and went north, and he found himself in this land that people happen to call Midgard.
Okay, so it's not like in Elfheim, if you keep walking, you can eventually get to the Egyptian version of Elfheim, which would be very trippy and cool.
I guess you theoretically could, because all of our realms, I mean, we established they exist like Freya says, they exist in the same physical space. They're essentially just kind of like, dimensions on top of each other. That's why the temple, the realm temple, and the bridge can all exist. It exists in all the realms. All the towers, all those things exist in the same realm. So, if you were inside the light temple in Alfheim, and you could theoretically travel right from there, to Muspelheim or Niflheim or any of those places, you would be in that location.
The 9 realms were stated to exist on the branches of the world tree. They were never specified to be physically contained along its branches. As you can see, the 9 realms are not constrained along the branches. The Yggdrasil was also claimed to be omnipresent across the realms.
Didn't think you'd be one to
Where is a Yggdrasil if it's supposed to be omnipresent?
mount a rescue mission.
He saved our lives. We are indebted.
Ah, yes, you big softy. Should be easy to find Birger from up here.
The others were frightened of this place. We should be cautious.
On that note...
Dragon!
The 9 realms are also claimed to be different space-time continuums because they exist on different planes of reality. Planes are also defined as flat 2-dimensional surfaces. The red lines indicate the planes on which the realms lie. Furthermore, Freya also mentioned that the 9 realms exist in the same physical space.
All the realms exist in the same physical space, reflections of each other.
A physical space is defined as a 3-dimensional space making up a universe. People also commonly claim that the 9 realms are separate space-time continuums because Mimir said that time flows differently in each realm. In physics and relativity, time dilation is a difference in the flow of time for different objects, as measured by clocks. There are 2 different kinds of time dilation. The first kind is due to the relative motion between 2 objects. Time dilation also occurs due to the warping of space-time. Any kind of energy, including matter, can cause space-time to warp. Look at how Interstellar portrayed time dilation due to black holes.
Around a hoop. Landing there takes us dangerously close, and a black hole that big has a huge gravitational pull.
Look, I could swing around that neutron star to decelerate.
No, it's not that. It's time. The gravity on that planet will slow our clock compared to Earth's drastically.
Oh, how bad?
Well, every hour we spend on that planet will be 7 years back on Earth.
Thus, different flows of time in no way indicate the existence of different space-time continuums. Time moves faster on Mars than it does on Earth, but I don't see anyone saying that Mars is a completely different universe or space-time continuum because of that. Lastly, the Yggdrasil exists in the realm between realms, which is a 3-dimensional space, stated to have stars in it.
Speak.
The tree has become rather overgrown. And if it grows too wildly, the branches risk getting too heavy and falling, which is not ideal considering they hold all the realms.
I am no gardener.
What an absolute shock. No, I do not require any horticultural skills from you, but I would ask that you keep an eye open for the stags of the 4 seasons. They normally graze upon the tree and keep it tidy. Unfortunately, Bitter decided it would be funny to trick Arrogant into releasing them. If you happen to find the stags during your travels, I would greatly appreciate assistance in bringing them home. I would have one of my spectral squirrels do it, but they, well, keep eating the feed I give them. Consequence of it being the most delicious food in all the 9 realms, I suppose.
We have seen. We use them to breach the flaw. Strike the city with our allies.
Sounds desperate.
Good. Desperation is our advantage.
Father and I first met. We nearly took each other's heads off.
You never told us what Magni and Modi had to do with Hrungnir.
Oh yes. Well, what happened after Hrungnir fell slain upon Thor was that nobody in the court could get the stone body off of him. Thor was no use at this point, his brain rattled, his breath shallow.